Hello and thank you for joining us. My name is Ariel Poriles. Today's goal is to go through some of our day-to-day data processes and try to find better ways to run those. Now, just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar will be shared with you following the session, so you will have a chance to review it again at your own pace. Like all of our other webinars, it will be hosted on our webinars page on our website. We also welcome your questions. Please feel free to type in those questions through the questions webinar panel. I'll try to answer those as we go along and mostly at the end. And I do promise, for those of you we don't have the chance to answer all of your questions, we'll make sure to get back to you after this webinar with some additional information. Okay, let's get started. For those of you who are new to Dundas, you should know that our platform, Dundas BI, is the most flexible BI and analytics platform. This is the #1 focus we have when we develop it, as we want to make sure that our users never feel trapped in a box. In other words, you can achieve whatever use case or requirement you face. We offer that flexibility by providing rich end-to-end capabilities that goes well beyond data connections and dashboards. You can see some of it on the right-hand side. Secondly, we make sure that every element is fully customizable, so users can design it exactly as they wish. And finally, the platform in its entirety is open via public APIs. That means it can be customized, integrated, and extended as one sees fit. In today's webinar, you'll have a chance to taste some of those capabilities of Dundas BI across different areas, ranging from data preparation, modeling, and analysis, the presentation layer, and all the way through collaboration and full automation. We believe that by offering the ultimate flexibility, together with a great dedication to customer success, we allow our customers to achieve their most complex project goals. The proof of that shows well in real user reviews, where we constantly get top rankings. For example, on Gartner's Peer Insight review site, where we have the highest overall rating among the top 20 reviewed vendors, or in the largest BI survey in the world, where we secure the #1 spot for product satisfaction among other categories. Okay, so with this short introduction of Dundas BI and what it's about, let's dive deeper into today's topic. Is Excel the right tool for the job? There's no doubt Excel is still the most popular data handling tool in the world, and in many cases, for the right reason. There is no debate that spreadsheets can do a great job for many small data processes, namely calculations and simple analysis. Personally, I like Excel and I use it quite often, but it's not always the right tool for all the data processes it is used for, especially when it comes to business intelligence and reporting. There's lots of content online detailing different concerns around the usage of Excel for BI and reporting. Most of those focus on the high risk for errors when doing lots of manual editing, such as copy-paste operations. Perhaps one of the best examples for the potential cost of such manual operation is the $6.2 billion JP Morgan Chase trading loss. That error occurred thanks to a process of copying and pasting data from one spreadsheet to another. In fact, what happened is that copy and paste operation turned a key measure to being added versus being averaged. The result, risk officers at JP Morgan believed that the credit derivatives bets were half as risky as they actually were. Whoops. Now, as mentioned, there's lots of other articles and content available online. Most of those details the Excel features limitation. But in today's webinar, what I really want to do is I want to focus on not features, but actual processes that are used and done via Excel, and the signs you need to be aware of to tell you that you need to actually think about replacing those processes with a different solution, ideally BI platform. So I've categorized those processes into 4, and these are the signs you need to remember or think about when you want to review this process and try and find better ways to optimize those. From left to right will be inefficiency, instability, scalability, and indifference. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through each one of those signs and try to show how this sign manifests in Excel, how that Excel process looks like, and give you examples of other cases where it shows up in Excel, and then how you can optimize those processes with a different solution. So let's get going. The first sign, inefficiency. If you find yourself wasting time repeating the same steps over and over again on a regular basis just to update your Excel reports, you may have a problem with inefficiency. This is a quote by Albert Einstein that our CEO likes to keep on reminding us of. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So yeah, maybe your process is working, but if you expect that process to be a bit more efficient, that's probably not going to be the case if you're going to keep on repeating yourself. A great example for that is Our customer, Rental One, a Dundas customer that used to work for 6 business days every month to construct an Excel dashboard just to display their KPIs, and 1 additional day to determine how accurate the distribution of the content was. Think of that. 6 days just to prepare the information, and then 1 day just to share the information with other users. This is a recent case study we just published on our website, so feel free to access our case study webpage to read more about this Rental One case study. Now, prior to implementing Dundas BI, the process of tracking KPIs for Rental One was historically 1 month delayed, at best 2 weeks delayed. Store managers and executives were at the mercy of finance teams and could not begin to construct dashboards from their Excel spreadsheets until the finance results were posted and published. At that point, they worked for those 7 days to construct the file and then share it with other users. Dundas BI was able to eliminate that process entirely by replacing that huge Excel file that they had with a single dashboard that updated in real time. Let's take an example in Dundas BI and show what that process could look like. So the following process is something that you've probably encountered quite a lot if you dealt with repeating a reports that you need to create every week, every month, depending on your cadence. So in this case, I have a folder that basically get Excel dumps, whether they were generated automatically by a system that created those files into a folder, or I manually go into a system, let's say a CRM system or an ERP system or any other operational system that can generate exports. It could be a CSV file, it could be Excel file, and those are stored in a certain folder on my hard drive. Now, over time, what you want to do is you basically want to take the last snippet of the data that you've exported and combine it into a larger file. There's a few reasons you want to do that. One is because you want to be able to report on historical trends, so you need to have all your data consolidated in one big file. Often people call that the master file, and then week by week they add that work week file or monthly and just copy paste it manually into the master file. So that's one way to go about combining that data together into one file. There's other reasons why you would want to do that beyond the historical trends, simply because the analysis of the data is easier to do when you have a single file versus multiple sheets open at the same time. And I won't take you through the process of opening those files and copying and pasting. I'm sure that you all have seen those files before, but it's pretty manual as you can imagine. So how would I handle that process in Dundas BI? In Dundas BI, you can, of course, establish a connection to this files list one by one, like any other data source. But there's another option I can take as well that will allow me to automate the process of combining all those files together. Here I am in Dundas BI. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new data connection. So I'm going to open my menu here, new data connector. And here I'm going to call it combined Excel file. I'm going to choose the type of connection. So it's going to be Excel. And then I can specify the credentials. All I need to do really here is specify the path where those files exist. So in this case, it's under my C drive, Excel exports, and then I can give a naming convention that corresponds to the file I want to pick up. So if you notice, I had multiple files in that folder. I don't want to pick up all of those. I just want to pick up the ones that starts with the word sales. So I can use sales *xlsx, and if I need to, I can also go into advanced configuration, define structure. In this case, the file is pretty standard. It can be easily read by the system without any configurations. Apply that, and now a new data connection named combined Excel file was created. Next, what I can do is I can go into exploring that data. So I'm going to click on Explore Data and open my list of data connectors, and you can see here that combined Excel file connector. And if I open that, you can see that it will actually show me the original fields from that file. So the continent, the country, the date field, and the sales amount, which are all fields that exist in that original Excel file. But I also have 3 additional fields created for me: the file name, the file created time, and the file modified time. And those fields are basically used to help me identify where is the data coming from. Is it coming from the master file, or is it coming from this workbook file, or from other workbook files if I have multiple files in that folder sitting for me. So at this point, like any other data source, I can start exploring the data and analyzing it. So I can just say, well, you know what, let's explore that data by date. and bring in the sales amount as well. And as I do that, Dundas BI, again, like for all the data sources, will basically be able to explore that information and try to recommend the best type of visualization to use for it. In this case, it's a data sales amount displayed over time, so it's recommending or visualizing that data for me using a line chart. And I can keep on using the Dundas BI tools to analyze that data easily. So for example, I can use the built-in time dimension and say, well, let's explore this data at the year level. So just drag and drop that, and I can now see the information at the year level. Maybe I want to see it at the month level. Bring that in. And now I can easily explore that at the month level. Now I can keep on doing additional data manipulations that in Excel could take quite some time. So beyond the unioning of all those files that Dundas BI automatically creates for me with that connector, I can do a lot of data analysis in the tool that in Excel could maybe involve multiple steps, multiple data manipulations. For example, one common analysis that I often want to do over time is add a comparison to a previous period. So for example, let's say I want to focus on just the 2008 list of data points. So I'm going to select everything which is before 2008, go into my filter, and exclude that list of data points. Once I do that, I'm getting a trend for this 2008. And now I want to have that trend compared to the results of the previous year. Same period in time, same month, just 1 year ago. How do I do that? Simply click on add period over period, choose the offset in time, so in this case it's 1 year backwards, apply that, and then Dundas BI is automatically now able to show me a trend of that same data results in the same month just a year ago. And you can see a year ago I was trending in a pretty similar way. The trend is consistent, however I was almost with triple the amount of the sales amount I have today. Could be many different reasons to explain that shift in the sales amount, but you can definitely see that there is impact to the season of selling. So February is a strong month for me, March pretty good as well, April is actually not as good as the other months, so probably there is a seasonality factor here. But at the same time, beyond the seasonality factor, something significant happened to my sales and hence it dropped comparing to the previous year. Maybe I'm started offering my products in a different way. Maybe the new competitors were entered the market and are now selling at half price. Something happened, but definitely it's clearly a bad impact on our sales amount. Now, why am I doing all this? The union operation in Excel, depending on the version of Excel you're using, if you're using older versions, you could have maybe solved that with some add-ins or a VBA scripts. If you're using a newer version of Excel, maybe there's direct tools that they can help you with that. But again, it's not uncommon to see many legacy processes of Excel that are not just doing unioning of multiple files, but also doing additional data manipulations once you've connected that file. And those data manipulations can be unpivoting the data or doing joins across multiple data sources. In Excel, those joins are often done using lookups, VLOOKUPs or HLOOKUPs, usually VLOOKUPs. And those VLOOKUPs, if you've used those in the past, they're quite good if all you want to do is just bring in one column of data. But if you want to now join data sets with multiple columns, how do you go about that? Then you have to start maintaining a VLOOKUP column or function for each one of the columns you want to bring back into your data sets, into your combined data sets. So a lot of manual steps, manual operations that you would need to do. And in Dundas BI, you can definitely automate those steps using a very simple set of configurations, as you just saw, and get to the point where your data manipulation, data transformations are fully automated. And from that point on, it's just a question of doing analysis the same way I just did right now with adding period over period or visually filtering the data and going about sharing it with others. So now if I want to share it with others to complete my process, I can just click on Add to New Dashboard, finish my my dashboard design, or just share it as is, and click on the share option to decide how it's going to be shared. Now I can do it using a link. That link will always be active with the latest data available, or I can automate the process and distribute that dashboard to other users on a scheduled time basis export. So it could be a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever my schedule is. Could be a data-driven notification, so I can maybe share that data only when something occurs, such as a value, for example, my sales amount value is now trending significantly different comparing to the last year. I can do it also based on the other conditions, which I'll specify later. But basically, completing the process of getting to combine the data and then all the way down to sharing it in an automated way to other users so they can get in the inbox once a week doesn't require any VBA, doesn't require any scheduled task in your computer or one of your servers. It can all be done directly through a single interface, and as you can see, pretty easy to access and configure. So that's a very quick and small example. Now, where is the heavy lifting of the data process? That typically happens in my data cube layer. So for example, if I expand that metrics that I just worked on, I didn't need to go and define any data process. All I did is just connect your data and then start to analyze it. But if I were to go back into that source model that powers that metric set, I can see that it was automatically created for me. It's called source cube for this metric set 1 that I'm just showing you right now. And I can actually go and promote that into a data cube that's going to be visible to other users as well. And that's part of the power as well. Oftentimes when you create a process, it's very hard to reuse that process in Excel. Even if you use the newer versions of Excel and have the option to connect to a folder and combine a union multiple files together, reusing that process that you just started in a different location or as a base to that data model that you want to use somewhere else is going to be very difficult or very time consuming. In Dundas BI, everything you create is not only automatically saved for you, but also available for reuse by other users, of course, if they have the right permissions. So let me go ahead and promote this model. And what I'll do now is I'll expand my list of data cubes, and you can see now that sample data cube is just promoted. And if I open that, the process is very simple right now. A connection to all my Excel files, and the process results containing my measure and all the different dimensions. Now, this is where all the automation power I just talked about comes into play. I can come in here and define things such as joining across multiple data sources, doing things such as default filtrations, data conversions, string manipulations, mathematical manipulations, adding calculated elements, very similar to the way you would do it in Excel, adding different formulas together to create some kind of calculations. Definitely something you can automate and have as part of your process. And you can even go into more advanced functions. Some of those are, of course, available in Excel. Some of those are not. Things like applying your analysis through a Python script or an RA language analysis script. So if you are familiar with those data science languages, if you are familiar with those advanced statistics you can produce with R or Python, you can definitely integrate that into a single data process flow versus having to use Excel, maybe then a different tool, maybe going back to Excel for your visualizations, or counting on VBA or different add-ins that are not always very easy and simple to maintain. Finally, you can go about automating the process of refreshing the data. Now, by default, data is always going to be read from the source, so it's always going to be refreshed for you. But if you want to optimize for better performance, you definitely have the option to also pull that data into a schedule and calculate and go through the entire model, and then finally warehouse that data or store it into your server memory. So again, the process of not just collecting that data, transforming it, and sharing it with others, but also optimizing it is fully automated and doesn't require any repetitive tasks before you can share it with other users. To summarize, if you find yourself repeating the same tasks over and over again, whether those tasks are around data connection, connecting to your different data sources, including multiple files, whether your tasks are around data preparation, including multiple steps such as unpivoting, doing lookups, doing different data transformation and manipulation that requires multiple steps in Excel, whether you find yourself repeating the same steps doing analysis such as period-over-period analysis, or if you find yourself doing the same steps around the way you need to prepare the data and distribute to other users from the security point of view and from the point of view of distribution to email or a different folder creation, you are probably suffering of inefficiency issues, and that's where you need to find better ways to optimize that process, ideally automating it end-to-end, as you can do in Dundas BI as I just demonstrated. Moving on to the next point, and that is instability. So if you're having difficulty maintaining your Excel data process, you probably have a problem of instability. And there are multiple examples for instability, such as the problem you may face when your data files become too big. If your Excel files they become quite large and may take a big toll on your system memory on your computer. You're not able to open it. You get error messages such as the one on the right hand side where the file cannot be opened because there's not enough memory available or disk space available. Or simply try to use Excel to manipulate data that is getting too big for what Excel can handle. So for example, you're trying to handle an Excel file or a CSV file, for example, and open it in Excel, and that CSV file contains more than 1 million records. In fact, to be accurate, it's 1,048,576 rows. So if you have more than that in your file, you won't be able to open an Excel, and then you'll face the error message you face on the left-hand side. There are other examples as well for instability. Sometimes you'll see those manifest when you try to share a file that has some VBA script or connection to different data sources. Different warning messages will show up, and different users will get those. The source is not always easily reconnected when the file is being shared and distributed. So many different examples for where you will face that type of problem. And again, most of those are rooted in the fact that Excel is basically a client-side application. It's not really powered by a server in most cases. It's just a desktop-based application that is trying to handle all of your data for you. And it works well for small data volumes and for small files, but it doesn't always work well when you need to scale it up to an enterprise level that needs to be shared and reused with many different users. So with that in mind, let me show you a quick example of how those things can look like in Dundas BI and how Dundas BI is overcoming those different challenges. But just before we go back into Dundas BI, let me quickly show you how one of those problems can look like in Excel. I'll try and open up a file here. This file is not very big. It contains only 2 million records, 2 million lines. So not small, but not extraordinary. It's a CSV file. Excel is processing it, takes some time, 29%, 41%. And after some time, I'm getting this error message. File uploaded completely. If I click on show help, I can see the problem is that contain more than 1 million records, and therefore it can only open up until that number of records. If I hit OK, I'm getting a partial data set loaded in my Excel file. I need to do some additional manipulations here to process that CSV file. That doesn't matter. The real problem here is that I don't have all the data and I can't really fully analyze it. So let's take a similar use case, but at a much larger scale. So instead of looking at 2 million records, let's go into Dundas BI and look into a data set that contains much more than that. I'm going to open a public data set hosted in a database called XSOL. This is a data set about Chicago taxis information, taxi trips. And if I open that and drag in, for example, the companies, I can now see all the companies that operate in the Chicago taxi market. And I'm going to add here the count measure just to see how many records I'm dealing with. I'm going to expand here and show the totals. And what I can see here is that I have about a total of over 100 million records in that data set, 105 million records to be exact. And you can see that information is coming back very quickly, and it's also done in a very visual way. Now let's get some interesting information, useful information for this data set. I'm going to remove the count measure and bring in a different measure here, the trip miles. I want to see which company in the Chicago taxi market has driven the most miles. In total, it's almost 300 million miles that were driven. And I can see different companies with higher numbers than others. Problem is that right now the companies are identified using a company ID, which is just a number that's not very helpful to me. How can I overcome that problem? In Excel, what I would do is I would bring in a different data set, usually in a different sheet, and then I would do a VLOOKUP, or because I'm using a newer Excel version, I may be using joins, but ultimately I'll have to combine it to different sources. It will take a few steps, and only then I can analyze it, assuming I can actually open the files in Excel. In here in Dundas BI, all I need to do is just go into my files, bring in the taxi companies sheet into my Dundas BI environment, just drag and drop it. You can see here now appearing the data connections. And now I can come in here and drag and drop the company instead of the company ID right onto my company ID. Dundas BI will join the different data sources together, and now will allow me to see the results with the company name versus the company ID. And I can of course come in here and sort this. I'm going to sort this ascending, so it's a bit more interesting, and I can see now the top companies in the Chicago taxi market in terms of trip miles. So as you can see, very quickly I can now join and combine those two different data sources, and again all those actions that I'm doing here visually are transmitted behind or translated behind the scenes to a data model that I can ultimately reuse in a different data model or enhance and extend even further. If I want to do that, again, all I need to do is just go into my metric sets and open that data source cube, promote it, and I'm going to call this big data. Open my big data cube, and now you can see that process I was working on. So a selection from XSO with 105 million records, and joining that with my Excel spreadsheet that contain the company ID and the company name on the fly, and I'm getting the join results and the process result that I could analyze very easily. And again, as mentioned, this process can be extended with additional calculations or additional manipulations, or I can reuse it in other models. So I can easily take this data cube, this big data cube as my structure data model, and then drag and drop it into a different data model that is using that as the base, and keep on building on top of that as I need to. So going back in here to summarize, if you find yourself fighting different Excel error messages, if your users are complaining about the VBA scripts that they don't know how to maintain or modify, and those VBA scripts are throwing errors on their instances, these are problems of instability that you can usually solve by creating a process much more streamlined that's not dependent on the client desktop application, but is actually able to process information on the server and send it back to your client. So no matter how heavy or thin your client is, usually you're able to process information and visualize it even on a mobile device very quickly. Okay, moving on to the third process that I want to talk about, where you can face challenges, and that's around scalability. Or the third sign, I should say. So you will see scalability issues whenever you want to try and take your report beyond yourself and share it with many other users, whether it's internal with your internal stakeholders, or whether it's external to your customers or a partners of your organization that wants to consume information. And that can get even more tricky when you want to do it in a very professional way, if data is what you actually deliver as an asset to those organizations. Many companies these days monetize their data or use reports as a way to validate whatever they produce for their customers. And today, Excel and even PowerPoint are just not cutting it in terms of the professional level you want to have when you want to share that information with your external users. And that is part of the reason why we see a lot of customers moving from Excel-based reports to use Dundas BI or other platforms, simply because they want to up their games into the professional look and feel and display of those different reports. But let's go back again to the root of the problem, scalability. The first problem of scalability before you even talk about the problem of the look and feel, is definitely around the ability to protect information in a way that works in a scalable manner. What do I mean by that? Being able to apply security to different data sets and still have the same report shared and reused across many different users. If you want to do that in Excel, that's quite difficult. Usually you would need to use VBA scripts or some other kind of a sophisticated mechanism, different types of workarounds. Usually those are bound to fail or simply too complex to use in a way that's really scalable. So how do you go about solving those data security problems with a Dundas BI? Quite simple. Let me go back into a Dundas BI and show you just that. So here I am back in Dundas BI, and what you can see here is an example demonstrating how I can apply security at a different user level. So basically what's known as row levels data security. In this example, I have a different user role. I have managers, I have directors, I have VPs, and they each can see different substantive data. For example, some of them can see information for one country, some for other countries, some for the entire continent, some for multiple continents together. Again, depending on the level, the permissions level. How Dundas BI does that simply allows you to apply what we call a custom attribute, basically a value that identifies what subset of the data the user can see. It can be done at the user level or the group level, on top of the data source you want to extract data from, and then automatically show the filtered data. So the same report, the same dashboard can be used across multiple users, and each will automatically get refreshed with his own data. Let's say take a look at the simulation for that. So I'm going to open the simulation, and right now you can see I'm logged in as a user, can see information for Africa. If I do the same with a user that can see only for Asia, I can click on that, and now you can see the entire dashboard updates automatically to show the same information, the same design, the same dashboard, the same metrics, just with Asia information. Same thing goes for Europe, and of course for all the rest of the filters I create on that page, simulating what each one of the users will see based on his custom attributes. So very simple to apply that in Dundas BI. The other thing you want to do as well when you want to share reports with other users is you want to allow users to interact on top of that data. How do you do that? Often by applying what we call annotations or notes on top of a data set. For example, here in Spain, I can see that I'm selling a lot of videos, but I'm not selling any audio products. Why is that? So what I can easily do is right click this data point, click to add a note, and here at the top here, just type in my comment. So I can say, how come we are not selling any audio in Spain? And small space here. I can now choose if I'm going to make this comment public or private. If I'm going to make it private, only I can see it. But if I make it public, all the other users that have permissions to see this data will be able to see that comment as well. So I'm going to leave it on public, apply that, and then this comment is going to show up on top of that data point. Now the beauty of that is that other users can come in, reply to me, and have a discussion on top of that data point directly in my dashboard or report, but on top of my visual. A similar thing can be done in Excel on top of a table cells. One of the biggest differences though is that the way I can communicate that note to other users. So in Dundas BI, when I set up that note, I can also set up what we call note notifications. So basically, if I'm the owner of the metric here, if I'm the owner of the sales of the different products per country, I can be the one that's set up to receive note notification on top of that metric, and every time a user will come in and type in a question or provide a comment on top of that metric, I'll receive a note directly to my email with that specific comment. So very easy to now make sure that this information gets across all different users versus staying as comments in cells, individual spreadsheets that are never shared with other users or never found by other users. So another example for how you can easily scale this and take it not just from the security point of view but also from the collaboration point of view to many different users together. So to summarize on the scalability, it's not just around the volumes of data. I think that's more related to the instability sign I've talked about earlier, and I've demonstrated with the very large data set example. It's more around the way you can actually take whatever you've produced and now diffuse it or share it with many different users, internally or externally. And I think that's a good segue to our last and final sign, and that is indifference. If you find yourself getting a weekly report into your inbox and you simply don't care about it, that's probably a problem of a report that's just not interesting enough for you. And why is it not interesting enough for you? One, it's probably because it's not visually appealing enough, and that's definitely a problem that people often ignore whenever they create reports and dashboards. Visual appeal does have an impact, especially on the initial adoption levels of your different reports and dashboards. But beyond the visual appeal, it's also a question of what can you do with it and how relevant it is to your day-to-day operations. Oftentimes we tend to have spreadsheets and reports just for the sake of having those without being able to truly go and dive deeper on top of that information with the right
backing information that allows you to ask the next question on top of it. Oftentimes, just a summarized results in the Excel spreadsheet. People see that, and they become numb to it after a certain point in time. So if you find yourself not interested or not caring about a report anymore, that is not just an Excel problem, that can happen with many different tools as well. But usually it's just driven by the nature of the way Excel reports are. Mostly tabular based, mostly static, and the way they are being shared via static files, which are not really online, interactive, consumable on many different devices whenever you need it most. With Dundas BI, you'll be able to create not just a report that's interactive and professionally looking, but also something that allows you to ask the next question and the next question, and keep on finding not just the outcome, but actually the root cause for different problems. And that has obviously endless amount of possibilities. I won't be able to demonstrate a lot of those, all of those today. So suffice to say that we have a lot of other webinars demonstrating a lot of self-service capabilities, a lot of design concepts, how to add context to your data, how to make it more actionable. Just go to our webinars page on our website, and you'll be able to see many different examples for how you can make sure that your reports are designed to be winning reports and not just something that people become numb to and indifferent after a certain point in time. So with that, if you are interested in finding better ways to optimize your Excel processes, and you want to try Dundas BI to help you get there, there's different ways for you to go about it. One way is to simply try it online. We do allow you to easily drag and drop your Excel spreadsheets or your CSV files onto our online trial version. You'll be able to easily play with the data and visually analyze it. You won't be able, however, to set up a complex data models beyond the drag and drop of the Excel spreadsheets onto the canvas. So if you want to do that, if you want to go further and build more advanced data models, if you want to connect to your own data sources, Google BigQuery, Accessol, Vertica, whatever type of data sources you have beyond the standard data sources, what you would probably want to do is go ahead and download our installer, install Dundas BI, and set up in your own environment where you can connect to all your data sources, build data models, and share it with other users as well to get their impression of the results. Or perhaps the best way to get started is simply by getting a product walkthrough from us. That can be a very tailored demo to your specific requirements. We can talk to you beforehand about your requirements, understand what type of reports you're producing today, and help you envision how those reports could look like in Dundas BI. So 3 great options, all available from our website for you to look at. And of course, we welcome any discussion directly with us. You can talk to our account executive and solution architects that are very knowledgeable about that process of moving from Excel to a full BI platform. So at this point, what I'd like to do is open up the floor for some questions. If you do have additional questions that you haven't typed in so far, please feel free to do so in the GoToWebinar questions panel, and I'll try to address those as much as possible in the remaining time, one by one. If we don't have time to fully answer your questions or demonstrate the answer, we'll make sure to get back to you following this webinar. And once again, at this point, I'd like to thank you for attending. Hopefully, this was helpful for you to kind of organize your thoughts around what's not working around your Excel processes and how it can better work in other tools. And I'll start answering questions now. For those of you who do not have any questions, I wish you a good day, and thank you again for joining.